Hello. Can you all hear me? Let's make sure we're working here. First things first, we'll get our. Okay, Rumble is working. I see. I don't know. But you know who we have joining us today just because it's special and she's wonderful. We all love her. The wonderful Chandler Remington. The wonderful and beautiful, may I say. Fetching, quite fetching.
Oh, stop it, Steve. You flatter me. Thank you. You're so
Just stop
sweet.
it. A
I'm
little more,
happy to be here. I'm always happy to be on anybody's stream. Anybody who invites me, I'm always flattered. Thank you.
Well, and I appreciate, and you've been following this trial. I've picked up on bits and pieces of it. I watched the entire closing arguments. I watched some of the evidence presentations of the defense team. I watched some of the prosecution team witnesses. So I have been diving in, and jumping in, and I think I have enough of it to form some opinions on some of the parties.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of what I've been doing is, whenever I cover a trial or I have enough information to grade the parties, right? Thank you, Scorpion. Good to see you. Danielle's here. See, Danielle says, hello, beautiful Chandler. See there?
Oh, hi, Danielle.
And,
I love Danielle.
Beautiful and intelligent. This is the thing. Don't forget that, because beauty is fleeting, but intelligence is just flower, right?
You're going to make me blush.
And a good person, too. She's very, somebody who is very helpful in my book in writing and helping it. First Last is here. Murph's Turf. One Young American. Guy Random. And Scorpion. And Danielle, of course. Danielle. Who can you say? Hi, Danielle. And let's see. Who else? Excited Utterance from the mythical land of Australia. And Ginger. KK Gons. KK Gons. What is that? That's interesting. I like that. Belle of the Bayou's here. Of course. Who else? So I wanted to talk about this trial. I've got some a little, see how my yellow stickies, everything goes with yellow stickies, right?
Perfect.
But I wanted to talk about this trial, and I wanted to grade the parties. But before we do that, can we just introduce? We got Chandler here. How much of the trial have you watched?
I've watched a fair deal of it. I'd say probably about 80% of it, something like that. I only missed a little bit on one of the days just because I had to work, but I have watched the majority of it pretty much.
Now, I want people to understand, and I may have a little different take than people expect on this trial, especially on some of the grades I'm going to be giving tonight. But I will say that I'm very okay. Let me just say where my heart is. Oh, Danielle says we're 15 subs away from 1,000. Yeah, if you haven't subbed to the YouTube channel, can you sub so I can get over 1,000? That would be nice.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Well,
You're so close.
It'll happen. I'm not pushing anybody, Oh, and let's get this out of the way, because Chandler felt bad because she was saying something about like me grifting, right? And I greatly value Chandler's advice because she's honest, she's smart, and she's perceptive. And she's involved in these streams, and a lot of streams, and she knows. And I really do think that you can grift too much, and I need to be like kind of dial it back and just be myself and give you content and give you value in content. And I'm not Andrew Branca. Branca is like every time he's turning around, he's like grifting, right? I don't know what the right balance is. So I reflected on what she had said, and I think you were correct. I think I need to be a little less, at least I need to be focused on giving content and providing the knowledge and the wisdom and the values and whatever I add to it. And I'll still sell the books and buy the books and do all that stuff. But that's why people want to see me, is not because they want to hear me talking about buy my book. They want to hear what I have to say about things. So there's a balance here, and maybe I was off balance, maybe not, but I'm aware of this, and I want everybody to thank Chandler, and I admire somebody. No, it's for somebody who's honest and willing to put themselves out there and offer up their honest view. And if I didn't agree with it, I would ignore it, right? But it resonated with me because I think part of it is I have so much to say
Mm-hmm.
that it's like I don't have, like, when I'm on my channel, like right here, I can talk all day, right? So I'm just going talk, and so I can just waste all time, and eventually I'll get to the book and everything, so it's no big deal, right? But when I'm on one of these channels and I only got like 10 minutes or 5 minutes, I've got to go and I got to push the book, right? Because that's the priority. But I don't know.
Well,
Okay.
everybody wants you to sell your books because you have a lot to say. You're incredibly intelligent, incredibly informed. And, I was just wondering if I had overstepped a bound because, the thing is, I respect you so much and I
I
value what you
know.
have to
I know.
say. And every time you come on a stream, it's like when you came on today on Jeff's stream for Legal Vices, you really contributed a lot and you pushed back against this narrative because I think sometimes what we can do is we can get into this mindset of, we are very pro defense, always. And sometimes, I think especially with the Anderson trial, we've become so jaded that we push really hard against the state. But the fact is that sometimes the state makes a good argument. And sometimes the state is asking an important question
Well,
that
and that's
doesn't have
yeah.
a resolution.
And I
So,
wanted to, we're going to talk about this because we're going to
yeah.
talk about this trial because
So
that's
you had a lot to bring because
and
you pushed back,
just
you
so
know?
that we're clear, what stage, because you don't know, somebody might be watching back. The closing arguments are done and the jury has not been charged. So we don't know what the verdict is at this point.
True.
Right. So the jury has not been given the verdict. They're going back. They're going to come back tomorrow morning. So I'm giving the grades untainted by knowing what the outcome is going to be. Is that fair?
I think
I
that's
think
fair.
that's a fair place because that's what I did with Murdoch too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we got One Young American. Oh, thank you. She's gonna or MLS show. I sent you an email about the. Okay, I don't know. I'll check that later. MLS. Thank you. And Guy Random watching in stereo. Peace. Rose is here. Rose is wonderful.
Hey,
Um,
Rose. We love Rose. I love Rose
Freedom
very much.
Ring and Shania Graham. I don't some of these names. Shania Graham. I don't
Shani?
know that. Salty Dog is here. Darcy and all kinds of people. John Gordon. Peace. Okay, so let's talk about this case a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, now, why did the state bring this case? Okay, one of the things is we are all on board with the defense. I want to say that right up front. I really like this family. I really respect them. I think they come across as good people. And some people say, how can you defend these people, right? Well, sometimes you're defending really good people that got themselves into a sticky wicket. And this is the type of people that I'm really impressed with. These are some accomplished people who are living their lives, who are doing the best they can. I mean, the brother came across great, the mom came across great,
They did.
the son, the accused came across great. He's an accomplished guy. I mean, these NFLers, there's a lot of thugs in the NFL, but there's also some guys like this who are hardworking people that have just doing everything they can. They're laser focused. They're trying to help their family. I mean, there's a lot of admirable people in this family. So I just want to say my heart is completely with the defense. Is that fair? I mean, would you
Oh
agree with
yes,
that?
absolutely. I think that Travis himself has a lot of integrity, and he came across incredibly humble. I like
Right.
the mom. I like the brother. I mean, the brother was a very strong witness. He was very likable. He was affable. Some of his analogies were fantastic. Like I loved how he said that she hit him in the head with the bottle, like she was playing whack a mole at Chuck E. Cheese. That was great. There were a lot of people who were saying that he reminded them of Isaac Baruch. Just in terms of his likability, and I think that he was an incredibly strong witness
Right.
for the defense to put on. I was impressed by that choice.
Okay. So now and then on the other hand, I think the
Yes.
attackers, the girlfriend, the bigamist, is comes across terrible. They all come across terrible. They all
Oh
come
yeah.
across as thugs and scum and liars and not well, right? Okay,
Oh,
so
absolutely. Yeah. No, they were very unpleasant. Like really pushed back against the questions. Very self-righteous. Had a big attitude. Very disrespectful to the court, to the attorneys. Terrible. Just and looked like they had something to hide and like they were being liars, which they were. They lied.
but now let's extract out the emotions and the feelings and the who we're rooting for kind of thing. All
Mm-hmm.
right. So and let's focus on the facts of it. The facts. Sorry, it's my. I got to learn how to turn that sound off. My wife, she's always going in and out the door, and it's going.
Oh, it's okay. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, it's part of the thing. Welcome to my home. So Darcy, Murph's Turf, Guy Random. Yeah, good people can murder. Okay, so let's just talk about the fact is if Mr. Murdoch gets convicted
Mm-hmm.
as charged, it is mandatory life in prison without parole. All right.
Right.
So I just to think Um, Steve-O has written an article on that. Thank the law pope for Steve-O. No, actually, or was it? Are you for you or for me? Because no, I would say thank Bronca. Bronca's he's the one that dragged me into this whole thing. Um, I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted by chat. Somebody said, "Don't see." I'm trying to improve my technique. Don't get distracted by chats.
I try not to look at chat when I stream, the couple of times
Right.
that I've streamed. And I feel like later I'm like, oh no, I ignored all of the people who came to, I always want to say hi. So it's a balance, right? Everything's kind of a balancing act,
It's
the
a
streaming.
balance. We'll work on
Yeah.
it.
I'm still learning. We're both learning.
So let's paint a scenario by which he's guilty.
Okay.
These guys come there, they beat him up. They're thugs, and they beat up him and his brother, and they're out of control. But at some point, they're done, and they jump back in their car, and they're running away, and they leave. And our boy, Mr. What's his name?
Rudolph.
Mr. Rudolph is angry, goes and gets his AR-15 pistol, runs back out in a fit of anger, and decides he's going to spray bullets at this attacker car in a fit of justification because they're attacking here.
Right.
And they're fleeing out of there, and he goes bang, 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 and riddles 39 holes in their car, killing somebody and hurting another guy.
Mm-hmm.
After the engagement's over, and it's done, and they're gone.
Yep.
That's first-degree murder.
Yes. That's the challenge, because the thing is that if they had really turned around and they were done, he has no reason to defend himself anymore. There's nothing to defend.
If that is the scenario, that's guilty, absent the emotion. So the state does have a case that they can submit to the jury. People say, why doesn't it get thrown out? Why didn't this? This is the scenario, this is the picture that they are painting. All right? Now, let's talk about the self-defense aspect. People say, well, there's nothing, he should never have run. All right? But see, now there's a defensive others argument here that is really kind of getting glossed over a little bit. I don't even think the defense really hammered on it as much as he could have. And that is 4-on-2, they're getting beat down. His brother's getting beat down. At some point, he sees a gun. There's a gun. He sees one of these 4 attackers as a gun, and he knows that they aren't armed. So he runs, and he knows there's a gun right inside the door. So he runs and gets his gun. And then when he comes back out, his brother is chasing after him or whatever, and they're all in this melee. So he's got to go rescue his brother. So he's got his gun now, and he runs out the house. He is justified in arming himself. He can run into the street with the gun. That is not illegal. He has a right to be in the street with his gun. He is then in the street with the gun, and there's the car, and then these thugs and his brother's in there in the street, and he sees the brother, and then he sees these people in the car, and they're pulling guns out like this, and he opens up at them. That's defensive others or defensive self.
That's the big question. Wait, but I have a question for you. Now, if the melee started at his house, but then moved to the street, does the castle doctrine no longer apply?
Yes. Castle doctrine has to do with duty to retreat within the home, okay? Yeah. Castle doctrine has been extended outside the home in Florida to not only your business, but also your conveyance, meaning your car. But when you're in the street, it's a little different. Now, we don't have a duty to retreat. That's the stand your ground law, all right? But I think that the 2 alternative scenarios are what we really need to think about as far as the case.
That's a good way to frame it. I also have a question. If his brother is in the middle of it, and he's pulling out his gun, isn't he then endangering his brother if he's shooting into the crowd?
Well, he's not shooting in the crowd. He was pretty accurate. He hit almost every bullet, went right in that car. So ARs are pretty accurate, and especially at that range. I mean, he was very accurate. And I don't. If the thing is that the distance isn't. I'm not as concerned about the distances because a pistol has a long distance just like a rifle. All right, now let's talk some more about this. So we have in our minds the two images of what is a reasonable self-defense scenario and a reasonable prosecution guilt scenario. If the jury comes back either way, there's not really an appellate issue there as far as like there's not enough evidence. There is enough evidence to support a guilty verdict.
Hmm.
Now here's the question though, and this is where the rubber hits the road for all you fanboys out there. And that is the state must disprove the defense theory beyond a reasonable doubt.
They must.
They must disprove the defense's theory of the scenario beyond an exclusion of a reasonable doubt. Now, the evidence that the other people in the car had firearms is coming exclusively from the brothers,
Mm-hmm.
right? The defense side. Yes. The jury can disbelieve that. If they disbelieve that, they can say, we don't believe that, and we believe beyond a reasonable doubt that didn't occur. Self-defense and defense of others is out, guilty. But really, the burden of proof is to say that scenario did not happen.
See, and that's my challenge, because I feel like in general, it's the sort of thing where, like, okay, I understand that when we do our streams, like when, David does his streams or Jeff, the whole idea is our chat is going to be biased in a way that is different from the way that the typical juror might think. And that's why I like to go over to Law and Crime and see how they're voting. But they're voting similar to us in this trial.
I hear that Law and Crime is very pro-defense too. So that's which they're generally not.
Which to me reflects a potential, that the jury is thinking the same way. And I mean, I think it just depends on, the integrity of the witnesses and how they have come across so far.
Now, Heidi in the Rumble says, is he allowed to protect his brother? Yes. There's no difference in his justifiable use of deadly force if his brother was being threatened with deadly force or he was. And one thing that might confuse people, and I think the state was a little slippery with this, and it raised my hackles, and that was that they said when he chased him out with his gun, he was acting unlawfully. That was lawful. He could go get his gun and run into the street with his gun. That is not in itself illegal.
But if they had retreated to the street in the time that it took, so let's say they're on the lawn, he goes into the house thinking they're going to stay on the lawn and maybe even come in. He goes to get his gun, he comes back out, and then he finds that they've gone into the street. Then does he have a duty to put down his gun at that point?
No.
Okay.
Disarm himself? No, absolutely not.
Okay.
So he can be in the street and they could have gunfight at the OK Grill and they could both be staring each other down with their guns at their side, right? When that guy points the gun at him, he has a right to defend himself in the street. He has just as much to be in that street as they do.
But that's the question really is, did they point a gun at him when they were in the street or did they not? And I think that's the biggest question because
that is the entire question.
Because that's the thing, like I took like this undergrad criminal law class and we sort of learned about, like the elements of homicide and, there's like the cooling down period, there's the heat of passion thing, there's the self-defense thing. And I guess the question is like, was there a reasonable cooling down period where, like the fight had ended and it was definitive that it was over? Because I think that we have witnesses
Let's assume it was. Okay. The fight is over. He goes, gets his gun. He runs into the street.
Okay.
He reapproaches. There's a car there and he's there in the street. There's no law being broken at that point. If they pull guns out and point it at him and he shoots them, that's self-defense. If they don't and flee and he shoots them, that's murder. Okay,
I think
you see, so it doesn't matter that the sort of the earlier fight isn't so much relevant as much as whether they pulled the guns at him or his brother in the car as they were fleeing. I think to me, that's the entire question. And it depends. How do you know that? Do you believe the brother and him or not?
Right. It comes down to the integrity of the witnesses. Do you believe them? Yeah. And do you think that they're just saying that? Because I think that, I don't know if it was you or Jeff who said something like, all the mom had to do was say, I saw guns. But she didn't. She said, I did not see any weapons.
That's what the defense attorney said in his closing. And that was exactly, I think I said that during the thing and then he echoed it, right? Or I echoed, I don't know. I said it and then he said it. I was like, yeah, exactly, right? Because if the mom was a liar, she should have said, oh, yeah, I saw those boys and they had guns.
Right. Exactly.
Why didn't she say that?
You have to ask yourself, okay, so you have two different sides here and they're each telling a story, right? And they have more to lose. The mom has more to lose because, this is her son. This is, he has charges against him. He could go to prison for life. She could lie for him.
Right.
You know, a
Maybe
mother
she
lying
should
for
have.
her son to protect him from
Right.
prison, that's something that would be understandable. But no, she seems to be telling the truth. And I think that you have this other side. They don't, you know, they don't have anything really to lose necessarily because they haven't been charged with anything. They got off scot-free. And I think they should have been charged with felony murder, but I don't know if you agree.
Well, let's before we get to our grades. I know people want to hear my grades, but
Yeah.
I'll let you grade first, and then I'll chime in. But
I had another question for you, but
okay,
I
so
want
go
you to
ahead.
go first. I did want to ask about the jury instructions because I think that you've kind of boiled it down really well, but you said that Florida has really confusing jury instructions today, and I
Yes.
want to know from what, because I read through the jury instructions, and I want to know, where do you think that, is it possible that the jury might get confused on the way that it's laid out,
Oh, for sure,
and
for
what
sure.
and where do you think those problems might arise?
Well, there's confusion. There's legal confusion, which I think there's a big problem with the idea of attempted manslaughter. I don't think attempted manslaughter is legally justified. We really need to revisit. We need to go a top to bottom review of our murder statutes. There's also a problem with first degree murder, and well, let's talk about the attempted manslaughter idea first, and then ask me about first degree murder problems. Um, Attempted manslaughter. Okay, manslaughter means culpable negligence causing the death of another.
Mhm.
So DUI manslaughter is typical culpable negligent manslaughter. You
Right.
drink, you get in a car, you're in a 2,000, 3,000 pound vehicle flying down the road. That's innately culpably negligent. It's not that you're intending to kill anybody, but you are acting so recklessly and negligently that that action causes the death of another. That's DUI manslaughter.
Right.
Okay, now what is attempted manslaughter? The mens rea for manslaughter is reckless disregard for the life, or it's basically negligent, it's culpable negligence. But that's unconscious. That is not a conscious decision to commit an act. Okay, it's a negligent act.
Would it be something like you hit somebody but they don't die, they end up
No,
surviving?
no, no. Forget that's the act. I'm
No,
talking
that's not.
about the mens rea, the mental state.
Well,
The
right, yeah.
mental state it takes to kill. When you drive, when people say, "I didn't mean to kill anybody. I was just drinking. I got in the car trying to get home." Right? Okay, it's a reckless disregard for life. It's a negligence. It's a culpable negligence standard. There was no conscious decision on the part of that drunk to
So
kill
there's no
that
attempt, is what you're saying. So the wording is
attempt. Now let's talk about
implies a conscientiousness, sort of.
attempt requires specific intent to commit the act.
Right. Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
so how can I specifically intend to be negligent?
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like it's a, like an attempted accident.
Right. That doesn't
Because
work.
manslaughter arises, you're saying, frequently out of
Perfect.
something like an accident.
Yes,
You can't accidentally do something and also intentionally do something.
exactly.
So the wording is what you're saying. So
Not the word. It's the fact that the crime shouldn't even exist.
but I want to ask you, so when you say that there's this thing in Florida called attempted manslaughter, what do they apply that to? What kind of situation do they apply it to?
Well,
Well, how will they charge it?
it's a lesser included, and this, we've gone round and round on this. And there was it really becomes a well. There's so much history here. This is really a deep dive. There was a
Hmm.
case called the Montgomery cases. We got, and there was error in this instruction. It's a problem in the instruction. It exists. It's illogical, but the Supreme Court says it exists, and because you have these lesser includeds and you have these attempts, it comes together and you have this artificial crime that the jury can check the box.
Hmm.
But it's illogical.
Okay.
All right, and I'll tell you another problem with the first degree murder statute. We really need see the problem is the jury instructions committee is all taken over by prosecutors, and they
Right.
write it and they make it as favorable to the state as they can, and then but they don't have any input from critics like me that say, wait a second, like working together we can make these better, but they don't want to hear from us. And they get on the standard instructions committee. All the judges say, well, let's just give them the standard instruction. And those are all written by prosecutors. And then
Right.
when we defense attorneys say, there's a problem with this instruction, the judge's like, I'll just go with the standard instruction. This happens all the time. Here's another problem with the first degree murder charge. And this is very in the weeds, but this is oh God, it drives me nuts. This is one of those kind of things that could result in a law review article, right?
Yeah.
Because it bothered. I know this is the kind of seed corn that's sticking in my burr. I'm like, this is bothering.
Well, tell us about it, Steve. We want to know.
All right. First degree murder requires pre-planning. It's
Yes.
pre-intent. Now you heard him talking about this, You remember the prosecutor was saying if you could listen to through all the haze, she says some people plan and they like think about it. And I'm going to go get my gun and I'm going to wait till they come home and I'm hit with my rifle on them, and they do like a day-long plan,
She
or it
said some
could
people
be
do
an
it for
hour-long
days, for months, for hours. Yeah.
month. Some people plan for just a few minutes. All right. How much precognition is required in order for first-degree murder to be sustained? Well, there's case law in Florida that is enough to pull a trigger. So the amount of pre-planning is just enough, like, oh, pick up the gun. I didn't mean to kill anybody. Oh, there you are, click. And just the amount of time it is to pull the trigger, that's first-degree murder. That's sufficient intent to kill, which is illogical.
It's not like that in California.
What's that?
I said it's not like that in California. At least that's not how I learned about intent, because I mean, the class that I took, we learned about intent and how, how intent is formed and how much intent needs to be formed. But there's also this sort of like heat of the moment, heat of passion,
Exactly.
thing.
See, the problem is now the difference between heat of passion murder and first-degree murder is completely eliminated. So there is no distinction. And this is a problem in Florida because, and you get these prosecutors that know that case law and they like to get up in front of that jury and say, all it takes is just an instant to form the intent to kill. And they're right case law wise, but it's wrong legally because there's no distinction between first and second degree murder.
I think that's a really big problem in this case, because I can reasonably see Travis going inside, getting a gun, and going outside. And if he saw these guys with guns, if they attacked him, even if they left, in his brain, he's thinking, my mother is in danger, my brother is in danger, my brother is across the street. I need to protect my house, my family, and myself. And even if they didn't point guns at him from that car, I could see from a trauma perspective, considering how traumatic that experience was for all of them, that in that moment he reasonably thought that his life was still in danger if they were still there and if they were not, driving away.
Well, and we have a couple chatters here who are picking up on the point that I'm making. One is some attorneys argue it's a split second, which is Shinny Graham Yolruck, and one young American says premeditated intent can be formed an instant before the act. No, must be misremembering Bronco Rams. No, you're right, but I'm saying that that's logically inconsistent with a clean murder regimen that distinguishes first degree from second degree murder. Okay.
Right.
All right. So that was your question. Did I answer it fully?
Yes, you did. Sorry, I apologize if I, interrupted and went on my own little rant there.
This is what we're here for. Isn't this fun?
Yeah.
What do you think, Chad? Are we having fun or what?
I mean, I really like learning from you always. And I don't know, I just keep thinking about this situation and how, realistically what it was like to be in that situation. And I just feel like no matter what the law says about intent, it's reasonable to be afraid for your life in that moment. Especially because in the heat of the moment, there was an active threat against himself, his family.
The law is, unfortunately, I really think there should be some kind of thing. Shinki. Okay, Shinki, how are you? The law should have enough flexibility that says if you were justified in use of deadly force, there should be like a 10-second flex rule. It's like, well, I was justified 10 seconds earlier, and now I'm not. So, life in prison for you. You see, this is the thing. Like, I really think, like, if he had pulled his gun out when there was 4-on-2 and they were beating him down, sucker punching him and stuff like that, and he pulled out a gun in the face of 4 attackers, he would probably be justified in using deadly force in that case. The fact that they had left. But the problem is his brother went and chased him, right?
Right.
So now he's trying to defend his brother, which is reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like this is too technical law applied in this case, when really he's acting in this heat of the moment. Like you say, how do you know how you'd react? I probably wouldn't react as cool-headed.
No.
So let's see. I want to talk before I get into grades, and I know what we're here for, and we're going to get there. We're going to do it. I want to talk about how we get to this trial. All right. How do you get to this trial? Why didn't something happen? Wasn't there? All right. Well, you had the sloppy police work. So what happens? The police get called. Oh, 10 cars, shootings. There's a mass shooting, and they pull in. There's a car on the road, and there's a dead guy, and there's another guy they're pulling off, and these guys are like, yeah. Mr. Rudolph, the Rudolph, he shot me, and he shot me with his air blasted. There's all these bullet holes in the car. Like, oh my God, this is terrible, right? And of course, it's black on black, right? So it's obviously this is some kind of gang thing, right? So the cops are like, oh, we've seen this a million times. So they go over to him and they say, come out of the house with your hands up, right? And he comes out like this. They recover the gun. They put the guy in the cuffs. They slam him in there and they say, crime solved.
Yeah,
right?
basically. I mean,
That's
they didn't really look for guns. They didn't canvass the area.
We got witnesses. We got a dead guy. We got a gun. Black on black violence. Who cares? Really? I mean, is that
And they're like, oh, the guy's an NFL player. This is going to be a big
but
story.
they don't know that. They don't know that. These cops are just reacting. This is what they're seeing. It's just another bunch of thugs shooting at each other. They don't remember. They don't talk to the family, so they're
That's
just
true.
more thugs. Because these guys are thugs. Why would a good guy be shooting at thugs? That's what they're seeing. So then they just say they arrest them, they dust their hands off, and they're done. That's the amount of police work that went in this case.
Yep. And then there was the dog that found the gun that did the most
later
police
on.
work out of the entire unit, like way more than the lead detective did. I mean, just yeah. No, I think you put an accurate spin on how much work was put into it.
Yeah, so that's what they did. And then now it lands on the intake attorney prosecutor's desk. Okay, so here let's just step by step.
Sure.
Now you got this case. Well, you got the family. We got a dead guy. Okay, well, the dead guy, and we got the shooter. Well, I'm the intake attorney. File. Right? Charge him. Charge him up. What can I charge him with? All this stuff? Okay, he's charged. Now he's charged. Now you got an information. Now it goes to the trial attorney. Now the media gets a hold of it. Hey, this guy's an NFL guy. And none of those other people have talked to the state or anybody else or the police. And they've got their little case and they think that it's solved and you need to plea. Right? Well, he's an NFL guy. So then it goes up to the brass. Then it goes up to the top prosecutor because now it's a media case. And the top prosecutor, now they've already filed the charges. And the cops are like, yeah, he's a thug and these guys and the dead family. And we're here for victims and against gun violence and AR-15s are bad. And we're going to send a message. And these pretty boy NFLers think they're going to shoot everybody up and get away with it. There's all these pressures. So the lead prosecutor, the elected guy says, prosecute him. It's over. That's it. So now you've got the trial team, which is who we're seeing, and their job is to get a scalp. Now they're probably offering. I'll tell you what. Here's the behind the scenes. They're telling the defense attorney, "Plea and we'll give you 20 years." Would you take 20 years if you're him? If you lose your life, you know who might take 20 years? Andrew Bronca.
Oh, hello there.
Hey, folks.
So I'm just talking. Have you been following this trial at all, Andrew?
Not at all. I mean,
Well,
I know he fired 38 rounds of an AR at somebody. That's about
39.
39 rounds an AR. So here's the
He's
scenario.
got 39 problems, but a B ain't one.
Yeah, everybody keeps invoking your name in chat. They're like, where's Branka when you need him? Branka needs to get in here on Vices.
Bronca on this channel.
Yes, well.
Oh my God! So like somebody was saying, I like your tie, by the way. It's very sharp.
Oh, my daughter picked it out. Yeah, just the
like
other
it a
day.
lot.
Brand
Oh,
new.
it is a nice one.
You look very fetching today, if I must say, in a non-gay sort of way.
It's been a crazy week. I've actually been in court this week, so I just got back from the office and I haven't had time to change into the usual Under Armour T-shirt.
Yes, this trial was built for you, Andrew. Man, I'll tell you, I'm surprised that it's a shame.
Was it? I didn't follow it because it seemed so obviously not self-defense. I mean, 39 rounds from an AR at a fleeing car, but sure, open my eyes.
Okay, well, it's actually a lot better than that. I was impressed, and we're all rooting for the defense. Everybody, even the law and crime chat, is rooting for the defense.
Yeah.
So here's the scenario of guilt: is this woman calls out a hit on her NFL boyfriend. 4 thugs show up at his front door. He opens the door stupidly, and him and his brother come out, and they get jumped and start getting beaten down by the 4 thugs in their front yard.
Okay.
All right. At some point, then we have a divergent story. From the state side, the fight breaks up. They run back to their car. Defendant runs inside, gets his AR pistol with a 100-round drum, runs outside with it, chases him down, and starts blasting the car 39 shots, killing one and injuring another in the car. All right, that's the state scenario. The defense scenario says the 4 guys are beating down the 2 brothers, and they're kind of holding their own, and one of the guys pulls a gun, a pistol, out of his pocket. And there's no doubt that there's a pistol in the pocket of one of these guys. He sees that, and he sees his brother. He loses track of his brother, so he runs inside to a pre-positioned gun that he had already just gotten, grabs the gun, and then when he comes back out, he doesn't see his brother. His brother's chasing after these guys in this car, so he goes running after him, and the guys jump in the car, and as they're jumping in the car, they pull out 2 firearms and point it at him and his brother, and that's when he unloads on the car.
It's still a lot of shots.
I know. Well, that's the big barrier. But he says he just shot until the threat was over.
Yeah.
The brother also says that, when he was getting, beat up, the one guy, takes the gun out, points it at his head, and tells him that he's going to die. So there's that. And I believe that Travis Rudolph witnessed this. That's my understanding. Well, although I missed a little bit of Travis's testimony. 2
brothers are very consistent. I will say, when you compare quality of witnesses, the defense witnesses are spectacular. The NFL guy is very well put together, a super character. The brother is a super character, great testimony.
By the NFL guy, you mean the defendant?
The defendant. Yes. The mother was wonderful. The sympathy, the defense attorney was excellent. And we're getting into the grading. The defense side, they're all liars. They all had to be subpoenaed. They're all a bunch of thugs. They're perjurers. There's the woman, his girlfriend that set this up, was actually married, and he didn't even know it.
Yep. And she committed a felony by deleting a text where she had said, "Go shoot his shit up," to her brother, and his brother said, "Oh, he's a walking dead man."
Oh, and they found the deleted text? I can't believe it. I thought stuff deleted off the internet was forever.
She actually apparently made the text available to the detective and told her that she had deleted it. I don't know why.
Everybody's so smart these days.
So it's quite an interesting scenario, because I think if it's possible that if you believe the 2 brothers and that they were being ag-assaulted firearm from the car with 2 pistols, that it was justifiable. All right. If you don't,
I mean, in fairness, you don't have to believe them. You have to believe the state disproved their story beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah, this guy can't get away with anything on this guy, right? we had been through that. We had talked about this. So you're coming in late, buddy.
Sorry about that.
No, it's great. I'm so happy you showed up, because I know that people wanted to hear from you on this case. It's really good.
I'm just enjoying not being in law school, but feeling like I'm in law school. So I'm learning a lot.
You're taking the con law class, the law of self-defense, the American law course.
Indeed. Yeah, I'm doing both. In fact, I'm pulling up the statutes, the Florida statutes, while we're doing this, and I'm looking at all the Castle Doctrine stuff, and I'm pulling up the relevant stuff, and and Steve is like, "Oh, it's whatever .32," and I'm like, "That's the one that I sent Jeff."
Right? So law of self-defense is has hired Chandler to update a whole bunch of our content on state-specific stuff.
I have been doing that all day.
Very pleased to have her.
Thank you very much for having me.
Very smart. She helped edit my book, my death penalty book. Did you get a copy, by the way, Andrew? I sent you a copy. I don't know. Anyways,
I haven't checked my mail in a while, so it's probably sitting in my mailbox.
Well, we got things to talk about. So we're talking about this case, and it's really an interesting case, and everybody's heart's with the defense. But I think there is a reasonable state theory for guilt, and I don't want people. A good defense case is still 50-50. And this case scares me. I know it scares everybody here. And we were talking about how there's inertia. Once you get these police, and they think, oh, it's just a black on black crime, street shooting, and there's a dead guy in a car, and here's the guy that did it, and we got the gun, and they lock him up, and they throw him in the car, case solved. Right? That's what they're seeing. They aren't getting the other side. And they don't care. They don't go and they don't do any more work. They don't find the 2 guns. The guy was dead. His rigor mortis on his hands is in a gun position. So like the guy took the gun out and tossed it. Seriously. Right? And then they found a gun, and so we do think there's definitely at least one firearm in the Tacker 4 and we think there's a second one that they didn't locate, right?
Well,
And
they
let me
didn't really
guess,
look.
the police investigation was subpar.
Yeah.
Oh God!
Right.
Do you want to tell her about the lead detective? Because oh my
tell
God!
what was her question? The defense attorney was hammered on.
Okay, so the lead detective, they kept hammering on, well, why didn't you look? Why didn't you canvass the area and find, look for like maybe disposed guns? And she says, this is her line. She keeps saying this over and over again, and she goes, "If nobody tells me that there's evidence, then I have no reason to go and look for it."
I did see someone mention that on Twitter. I was like, what are you talking about?
I watched this all night. I came back from I went out, I had dinner, and Jeff was like, "Come on stream, I'm dying." And so I came on, and I was up till 4:30 in the morning listening to this woman say that over and over again. And then they asked her, all of these questions. She was just so confidently stupid, and she was just saying, "Oh, absolutely, I would never do that." She's like, they're like, "Oh, you found out that the witnesses." She interviewed the witnesses for 10 minutes. Between 10 and 17 minutes, something like that. Later finds out that they lied. Later finds out that they lied, and the one woman who, is like the reason that I think everybody started watching this trial, because she's the most obnoxious witness I've ever seen. It comes to light that she deleted this text, which is a felony, and they're like, "Oh, you didn't question her any further about that?" And she's like, "Absolutely not." Like, why would I? So yes, it was subpar, and I think that she was the most infuriating witness, and I have a feeling that the jury was as infuriated watching her, and juries hate bad cops who don't do their jobs.
Yeah, and this cop was absolutely terrible, and the defense attorney hammered her on his closing. Holy cow.
Mm-hmm.
He lit into that cop, and it was great the way he leveraged it. And he says, "We would love for you to know the evidence in this case, but we don't have the resources of the state, and they prevented us from getting it because of that sloppy police work." And that is so true. That is so true. And so here's a problem that I find, though, as a defense attorney. Jurors hate for you to get somebody to get away with something because the police screwed up the investigation. They don't like doing that.
Right. And of course,
it's the best they could.
It's what every defense argues when they don't have the legal merits, right? They argue the investigation was somehow deficient. Now, in fairness, it's not like the jury knows this, because we don't have professional juries, so they're not hearing this all the time over and over again. The jury is presumably somewhat novel to the criminal justice system. But it is kind of, by default, the fallback argument for defense attorneys who don't have legal merit on their side. Oh, the investigation sucked. Because every investigation is defective, right? None of them are perfect.
Here, can you guys talk amongst yourself for just a second? Hold on a second.
Sure.
Hey, Chandler.
Hey, Branka, how's it going?
So far, so good.
I sent you an email. I finished the statutes for all the states you sent me, so I need the rest of them.
I responded.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay. I didn't see it.
So I sent you a bunch more of our law compilations and a list of the next 8 or 10 states or whatever it was. So we'll just keep on doing what we're doing.
Great. How's court been?
It's really frustrating. It's actually the most frustrating part of my job is the actual court work, and because I don't represent clients, I'm a consultant, so I'm an expert witness. So I'm not actually making the legal arguments, and it's that's hard for someone of my temperament, because I can see the legal argument, I can see the right questions that need to be asked to get the answers you want. But even when it's me on the witness stand, like yesterday, I was in Colorado, they call it a Shrek hearing, but basically it's a Daubert or Fry hearing. It's to qualify me as an expert witness. And I'm like, so I'm being questioned on direct examination and cross-examination. And I'm like, this is the question you need to ask me. And you're not quite doing it.
Oh God. That's going to be me someday, probably. I'm just like the armchair lawyering when you're lawyering the lawyer who's lawyering you. That's actually pretty funny.
And I just sent the defense team I'm consulting for like a lengthy PowerPoint, and I'm thinking, but I don't pick, I don't decide how it plays out. They're the ones that are telling the story to the jury. They're the ones who are asking the questions of me as an expert witness, and I can really only respond to their questions and maybe try to slip stuff in, a little bit from time to time. But they're the ones running the show, and to me, it's very frustrating. And that should be fair. I mean, they're the professionals; they're responsible for the case. They're the ones that have to set the narrative for their client. And maybe my view of the narrative is not as good as theirs. I don't know. It feels good to me because of course I'm the person that came up with it. But I'm a very kind of alpha orchestrated person, and so when I see what I think is the right narrative, to me it's 150% the right narrative, and anyone who's doing it differently is doing it wrong.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they're really doing it wrong. They know facets of the case that I don't know anything about. So, they're in charge. But for me personally, it's much easier for me to do the normal, day-to-day live stream shows that I do. Much more emotionally comfortable than to be there with an actual client. I mean, this guy's looking at basically forever in prison if he gets convicted. And his defense counsel, they're public defenders. They're good. They're way overworked. These guys. I don't just mean generally. I often say this generally, but these particular guys, they are way, way overworked. And that's, in one sense, that's unfortunate that that's the way it is. I mean, if this guy had private counsel, he would have a very, very different legal defense, not because the lawyering would be better, but because those lawyers would not have the other burdens that these public defenders have. But he doesn't. On the other hand, he's blessed to live in America and have a public defender at all. I mean,
True.
He's got a lawyer working for him who's working pretty damn hard, who got me on the case. And so we'll see. I don't know. It's
How much longer are you in court for? When do you testify?
It should be over this week.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a murder trial, but most murder trials, I mean, Steve knows, most murder trials are a day or two. They're not like the high profile ones we cover on our shows where they go for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Those are aberrant trials. Most murder trials, 1 day, 2 days after jury selection, it's all over.
Yeah, I often wonder if I have kind of like a skewed view of the way that trials work just because I watch all the televised stuff, but I haven't really gone to into court to just sit and watch a hearing. I've been invited to. I have friends who are attorneys who have invited me to come and watch them litigate, but I haven't done that yet.
To our public defender's office and sit with some of our trial attorneys and see how the real world works.
I mean, it might be quicker for me to go to Stanley Mosque than Daytona, but I would definitely love to come see you litigate. So, I mean, I'm down.
Well, I don't do. I'm mostly appellate now, but
oh wait, you don't litigate anymore. I always forget. I always think that you're still doing trials.
I do. I mean, let's just not talk about it, okay?
Okay.
I don't want. I'm done with my board certification. I don't need any more trials to maintain it until I retire. So I used to
said
troll
anything.
for trials, and but I don't need it. And if I didn't have another trial in my life, it wouldn't kill me. It wouldn't make me unhappy. So I have an oral argument on June 15th that'll be televised. So I think Jeff is thinking about televising that one. Anyway, that's coming up, and that's on a big issue. That's on actually one of the chapters on the cost of incarceration and ideas and answers in law.
You mentioned this.
That is the case that I'll be arguing in the oral argument in the
right. Wait, is this
but Chandler, I would encourage you to go to your county courthouse or however they structure it where you are, and just go sit. Anyone can sit in the courtroom.
Yeah.
Just go in there and sit. Set aside 2 or 3 days and just go and sit for the whole day and just watch what happens. Yep. And it will be, I guarantee you, it will be an eye-opening experience. It's completely different than the cases we see televised.
I'm certain that's true. Yeah, that's a good idea.
And there's different parts because you can go to first appearances at the jail. That's always entertaining.
Ooh.
And then you can go to then you go to arraignments, and you go to pre-trials, and then you go to trials. There's all pieces of the puzzle, and you can kind of watch each part. So and how it unfolds, and go to a motion hearing and see all the different moving parts of a case.
I'll have to plan that.
Let's get back to my the topic on conversation here. And
sure, because we haven't graded them yet, have we?
We haven't graded them, and
we've gone very far off topic.
and Andrew, you're in third chair here because you haven't watched this trial, so
right. I haven't watched even 1 minute of it. So
yes.
Well, I will say that you brought up an excellent point, though, about, if I may, really quickly. Yeah. So far, the entire time that we have watched this, nobody has talked about how 39 shots is a lot of shots. Nobody Nobody on panel, nobody in the courtroom, nobody is really like hammered on
I
that.
did.
No
I did.
kidding.
Yeah, I know. No, I mean, at least that I've noticed, and perhaps, well,
Wow.
I have not been on stream the whole entire time. I streamed a lot of it with Jeff. I have watched the majority of it, both like with Jeff, and then I watched some of MLS Law's coverage in the beginning. But yeah, no, people haven't really talked about how many shots that is and how excessive that is.
To me, that's the key question because,
I know.
of course, Steve is quite right. He said you can fire as many shots as you need to fire to neutralize the threat. That could be 39. It could be 339. Who knows? It's however many it takes to neutralize the threat. But the more shots you fire, the more stretched credulity becomes that you
Right.
needed actually that many shots to actually solve the threat.
I have
It begins to look like an overreaction, like rage, anger, something other than lawful self-defense. There can be explanations why you need 39 shots, but you better have one.
Well, that's what saved Rittenhouse, I think. He had an incredible restraint with his weapon. He didn't fire as many, he fired very few shots comparatively, and considering the situation he was in. If Rittenhouse had fired 39 shots at, Rosenbaum, I don't think that he would be a free man today. But,
I had a guy, I'll tell you a quick story. It was an appeal. It's one of the painful appeals in my history. It's a long story, but my guy comes around a corner with a gun, and there were cops with ARs in the woods across the street who opened up on him. They shot over 130 shots at him with their AR-15s and didn't hit him once.
That's the worst part.
I know, like,
why does that remind me of Pulp Fiction?
he drops his gun. The guy is like, he doesn't even know they're there. It's a long story, but he comes around, he's got this gun, and they just open up on him like, you guys suck. I mean, ARs are one thing. This guy, he hit like 37 to 39 shots. He hit the car. I mean,
that's pretty good. Yeah. Oh, I'm
and
impressed.
amazingly, only one guy died.
Yeah.
The others survived, so there was only one other guy that got shot.
I've got 4 kids. 3 of them are girls. The 3 youngest are girls, and I typically take them to the range and teach them how to shoot an AR between 10 years and 12 years of age. And at 12 years old, those girls can hit a head-sized target at 100 yards with an AR all day long. I mean, it's effortless. So ARs are remarkably easy to shoot. There's no excuse for missing with an AR at anything like realistic ranges.
Yeah, well, I see MG Law in the chat. Maybe would you like to come on, MG Law, because he's been watching this also. Send me an email to if you can, because I would like to have your input, because we're going to start grading here in just a second. So here's the thing. All right, so let's do the easy one first. The easy one first is the judge, because to me, this guy is just standard issue criminal judge, and it's like I just give him sort of a B plus, because he's not doing bad.
Which is pretty normal, right? I mean, you kind of order a criminal court judge out of a catalog. That's what you get.
You kind of get this guy. I mean, he's sort of just okay. He's not like, I'm giving him a B plus because there's a lot of bad judges out there. And I think that some of the discipline in the courtroom, the reason the prosecutors are not behaving badly is probably because of this judge, if I was to guess. And I mean, I felt a little bit of skepticism and enforcement going on, just the way he was talking, that kind of was like keeping people in line a little bit. So I sense that.
He talks about his cardinal rules,
Right. He's not blowing me away as being the best judge I've ever seen, which was Richard O. Watson, by the way, in Flagler County, Florida. The St. Johns County Courthouse is named after Richard O. Watson, and I had about 25 trials in front of him, felony jury trials, and he was the best judge I've ever been in front of, bar none. And he was just, you couldn't have built a better judge. So I've seen the best, and this guy is not at that level. But on the other hand, I'd say solid B plus. What do you think, Chandler?
Well, I don't know if I have the professionalism or the experience to really know how to judge a judge, but I will say that he offered to bring donuts for the jury on the last day, and that was pretty nice of him. So
they do that. Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's a regular thing. It depends on what kind of donuts. Are they cake donuts? Are they Krispy Kreme? Are they buttermilk donuts? My last day of my
this is the elected judge game, because these jurors are all voters, And so they go and they like, oh, what do you need? The judge is kissing their butts. All they're looking for. So they go, that judge was so great. He bought us donuts, and then we're going to vote for him. That's all that is. Don't believe any of this garbage.
Like I said, I don't know. So I don't know how to, I don't know what's normal or abnormal. But I will say that so far, he's been really quiet for the most part. I mean, there haven't been a lot of objections that I've observed that, I haven't really seen exactly anything that I disagreed with that he's done or said. So,
well, and some of the things he did, like when the witnesses were not answering, he'd ask, like, say, answer the question. I mean,
he did direct them.
The way he kind of interacted with some of the more difficult jurors.
Not bad.
He was pretty good. So I'm giving him a B plus. Are we okay with a B plus on the judge?
I'm okay with that.
Okay, now here we're going to get controversial here, all right? We're going to get very controversial. Prosecutor grading. I know what everybody thinks I'm going to give him, right? But I'm not going to give him the F. I'm going to give him a D plus.
Okay.
D plus.
Which ought to be a criminal offense, Steve,
yeah.
for a prosecutor to have a D plus grade. Given the power and authority they have, that ought to be a criminal offense right there.
I got my drink. It's my hot tea. I'm sick, so I got.
Hot tea sounds great. Yeah, the prosecutor is terrible. His closing was really bad. What happened to Branko?
I don't know. He jumped off.
Oh, weird.
I don't know. MLS Law. Did you hear me? Send me an email if you can, because I don't have your email. Hopefully Andrew will come back. He feels like he's not.
Maybe he had an internet connectivity issue or something like that.
You okay?
No, it wasn't the internet. It was just me. I was clearing out some tabs on my browser, and I accidentally closed the StreamYard tab. It was just old man mistake. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. So ASA. So I'm giving them generally a D plus. Now here's the reasoning behind that. First of all, they do have a case. There is a case by which you believe, and I mean, and it's actually a decent case. I mean, they are not bringing a frivolous case, right? Like Andrew says, I mean, you don't believe that they had guns, and he's riddling that car with 39 bullets. That's first-degree murder. All right, so they're doing their job as much.
By the way, is this like a community? Like there's other houses around?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
the neighbors were the ones who called the police because they heard what was going on, and apparently they live in a very nice neighborhood, and the neighbors are all supportive of each other. So, yeah.
Now I will say though, but here's my problem, and I'm being he's still getting a D plus, and I wouldn't be happy with a D plus. Would you be happy with a D plus?
I would quit the career.
Yeah. Their attitude was horrible. The attitude these guys have, I've seen it, and it's so bad. Now, they didn't, people were saying, like, there was a few objectionable things. There was a little burden shifting. There was a little comment on silence. There was little bits of it.
There was more.
Was it the usual kind of snide, sarcastic type of stuff?
Yeah, but it wasn't hit you over the head. Their closing arguments were legitimate closing arguments with the substance of it. The substance of it was not, it wasn't wrong. Like we remember the trial we did, Andrew, and it was like dong, 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 like the whole freaking thing. It was like one sentence and the whole thing that was actually reasonable. Everything else was out of bounds. That was ridiculous. They did not do that in this case. They actually laid it out kind of the way I would say you should do it, which is you have a theory of the case, you have your theme, you say, here's what the evidence is, here's the law, here's the theory of guilt. All right. So they kind of did it the right way. But the presentation was so bad. Chandler, I mean, explain to Mr. Andrew Branca here how bad these. Let's start with the first one, the female, the first attorney, the female, and then go to the comb over guy.
Okay.
Comb over guy.
Okay. Well, so are we talking about closing, or are we talking about just
closing arguments? We're talking
okay.
Closing. That's what I'm judging here.
Okay, so for closing arguments, the female attorney, she's a black female attorney, she put a lot of fake emotionality into her closing. She had a lot of hysteria in her voice that was very false. Her presentation, I mean, she made some good points. I would actually give her a D, not even a D minus. I would give her a D, maybe even a D plus.
Did I give a D minus or D plus? Let's go D plus. D plus.
I'm gonna say D plus. I mean, she was very shrill, very difficult to listen to. And I mean, Steve was saying, I only look at the substance. I don't look at the style. But for me,
Right.
the style kind of, it was very hard to pay attention to much else. And I just felt that overall, I don't really even know how to explain. Like
It was so painful. It was
she
the
she really rubbed me the wrong way, and especially with
was
her
so
questioning of
unlikable.
witnesses. She was terrible at questioning the witnesses. She really the way that she talked to the mother was really quite objectionable, and I felt like she really kind of screwed the pooch on that one, because the mother was a very sympathetic witness, and
Right.
her cross-examination was. I said before, I was like, they're going to have to be really careful with how they question the mom.
No, she wasn't at all.
Because she was
Ham-handed,
very
obnoxious.
sympathetic. The mom was sympathetic. She was classy. She was together. She seemed to be quite honest. She was sincere. She stood up really, really well. And the cross-examination made that female prosecutor, look so bad. I mean,
Throwing their credibility away left
Mm-hmm.
and right with every witness.
it made them look cruel. It made them, look
Mean, vicious prosecution.
unsympathetic. And
The mother, she was so sympathetic. She had lost her husband to a gun accident. He had been accidentally shot on the workplace. And this was and she was and raised two obviously spectacular kids.
3 kids.
3 kids, right? And then and these kids were really great on the stand. And her son is facing life in prison. And she was like, so, I mean, you just doing everything right. And that prosecutor came at her like vicious. Like she's
Well, I get it now, because I see in the comments someone mentioned that she was how can I put it? A fat German Shepherd. Drex would like her. That tells me everything I need to know about her without ever having even seen her.
But I think
the female prosecutor,
of the 2 prosecutors, she was the better one.
Oh, definitely, because the guy, so the male prosecutor, the comb-over guy, he, I basically, my thought was somebody needs to call his psychiatrist and tell that psychiatrist to lower his Adderall prescription, because this guy is he's just really just super charged up. I mean, he was screaming, yelling, he's tilting his head, every which way. His physicality, the way he presented himself.
It's like he was doing cocaine.
Yeah, it was utterly bizarre. He had a Max Headroom kind of vibe,
But
basically.
this is what prosecutors do when they feel that they don't have a case on the merits. I see this all the time. This happened
Pounding
in
the table.
George Zimmerman trial, right?
Well, this
Yeah.
is the thing. People were shocked, but I mean, I have seen this prosecutors. This is not atypical.
They do it all the time. It's an act of desperation. They're trying to get over the finish line, over the goal line with emotion rather than legal merit. Is what they're doing.
And here is my big objection stylistically, because see, to me, the prosecutor should be cool as a cucumber. The law is not supposed to be an appeal to emotion. You leave that to the defense side. You come back and say, here's the law, here's the facts. This is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and here's why. And you present your case coolly and concisely and confidently. Then they're going, and this guy, like this stuff, it's unbecoming of the officer of the court. It's an unbecoming of a state officer who should be pursuing the truth. He's like, if I yell at you long enough, and if I yell at you hard enough, you're a liar. This thing, look at this thing, look at here. You see, he's lying.
Yeah, that's why I liked her better, because she only yelled a little bit, I mean, she was shrill and hysterical, but he yelled the whole time. But the thing I really hated about the male prosecutor, and the thing that it pissed me off. I don't know, Steve saw this, so we were watching, and then he said something, and my face just fell, and I just looked furious, and I could not listen to him for the rest of the time. So basically, what happened was, right before what provoked this fight, what provoked, this murder, really, was the married girlfriend of Travis goes over to his house. She finds out that he's seeing another girl. And
no
he
kidding,
says
a top 10% guy has got more than one girl.
but the thing is, they were on a break. They were on a break, and she's like, who the hell is Kaya? She's FaceTiming this girl to try and talk to her. And he goes, you're just jealous that she has a better body than you. Now, this girl had a BBL, and she's talking about, I had surgery, all this stuff. And it was and they're like, no, but this was cosmetic surgery, right? She had a BBL. She was talking about she had some heart surgery or something, something really serious. So what happens is she gets pissed off at him. And what she does is not only is she incredibly physically violent to this man, I mean, she attacked him on multiple occasions. The brother said she hit him in the head with a bottle of Patron like she was playing whack-a-mole at Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah, I believe it.
And so in the closing statement, the prosecutor goes, he called her a bitch. Now, isn't that reasonable for her to be upset at that? And so she hits him over the head with a bottle. That's a reasonable reaction. And I'm like, no, the fuck it is not.
He actually says, well, I can't say that because I'm a prosecutor, but we all understand, wink, wink.
And so I'm sitting there and I'm going, reverse the genders. Okay, and if this was a woman who was attacked by a man that way and he hit her over the head with a bottle of Patron, would any prosecutor go and say that was a reasonable reaction? She said he had a little dick. Now, don't you think that's reasonable? For him to hit her over the head with a bottle of Patron?
He's explicitly asking the jury to come to a verdict based on their emotions about the event, rather than on the application of law to the evidence that's been presented.
And to be sympathetic to a female abuser who provoked and instigated and actually kind of, conspiratorially organized this whole thing.
By the way, a bottle of anything to the head is a deadly force attack.
Yep.
Right. But she broke his cell phone. She broke his PlayStation. Then she went outside and she hit him.
The PlayStation.
Oh yeah. Wait,
that's a deadly force attack.
There was somebody who was just like, put an F in chat for the PlayStation.
I put an F in there.
I saw that you did. I love that you did.
Well, and I want to just shout it. I see people were saying that I hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So
congratulations, Steve. That's awesome.
Now you have the opportunity to get demonetized on YouTube on a routine basis. Welcome to the club, Steve.
Yeah.
I love it.
So I will say that the shrillness, the emotion, the plays to the emotion, the crazy, another thing that is that the way that they treated people so differently depending on what they wanted. And like her attitude, these acting, these outbursts, that woman that she made at the end of her, what did she say at the end? She like shouted. It was
I don't even remember what she said. She was just shrill and hysterical, and I don't listen to women who are like that. It's all
it
noise.
was very hard to listen to either of these prosecutors because they were yelling.
But none of this is new, folks. This is prosecutors who don't have a case in legal merits do this all the time. I would encourage you to look. This year is the 10-year anniversary of the George Zimmerman trial. It's all on YouTube. You can find the streaming of the trial. Go to the closing arguments and listen to the prosecutors in that case in their closing. All they're doing is screaming emotions at the jury. It was contemptible. And they did the same thing in their opening statement in that trial. You can find that too. But that's what prosecutors do when they have no case on the legal merits.
And part of it,
the way prosecutors ought to operate is, especially on closing, say, listen, I know, this is hard. It's hard to send someone to prison for 20 years. It's going to be a bad experience for them. Nobody would want that for themselves or anybody they love. But these are the facts we showed you. The judge instructed you on the law. The only just outcome is guilty. And it's hard, but it's what's required. It's none of this screaming and theatrics. Again, as Steve says, that's for the defense. The defense does that because normally it's the defense that doesn't have any legal merit. I mean, most defense clients are guilty. So you work with what you have. But the state has a different mission than the defense. The state's mission is not to achieve victory at any cost. It's supposed to be to achieve justice.
Well, the state should be about the truth. They should be, they should be there to represent the truth of the matter.
Make a huge shout out to the hero of the trial, and that is Legal Vices. Legal Vices has been putting in the time, and he has been punishing himself. And I don't know how he operates.
He's in the chat, by the way.
I know, and he gave a $20 Rumble rant.
Hey, Jeff.
He said, "Good morning. I'm tired. I'm not excited for a seminar I have to give 5 hours from now."
Jeff did not sleep.
The guys on YouTube. I did make 1,000, so thank you, Jeff. And I'll hope to catch the. Well, I don't know. The verdict is tomorrow. I've got a lot. We'll talk about what I got going. But thank you, Jeff, for inviting me on and for covering this trial because it's been a lot better than what I expected. And yes, so we're talking about the prosecutors and why they do this. See, also, they're so used to winning and they're so used to just kind of having these softballs across the plate that when a genuinely difficult case comes up like this, they don't know how to deal with it. And so they think they could just pound on the table and yell and scream and threaten. That's what they do with the defense attorneys. It's like,
no, it's amazing.
I'm going to have life.
I was going to say
I
about
see it all the
Zimmerman.
time. The cases I consult on, I like to say we have an almost 100% success record in getting charges dismissed. But the truth is, to a large extent, that's because prosecutors are not used to dealing with well-resourced defendants. They're just not. And they have a stack of cases on their desk that are easy convictions. They're possession cases, they're drug cases, gun cases, child porn cases. I don't want to disrupt the YouTube algorithm.
Yes, I just got demonetized.
You
my
just
first,
me
right after
demonetized
the
you.
Sorry.
It took, how long did it take people? 10 minutes?
But these are easy cases to win. So they don't like to take the hard cases unless there's some other motivation to do it. And if you're a well-resourced defendant, you have a lot more leverage than you might think to get charges dismissed, to get put into a deferment program. And that's typically what happens with us. And so when prosecutors get genuinely tough cases, they feel compelled to take to trial. It's like someone who, maybe they run a mile or two a couple times a week, and suddenly they have to do a marathon.
Right.
They don't do well.
Well, another thing is being over there. One of the things, these are all line prosecutors, all right? And their job is to go out and win this big high-profile case for the state attorney's office, right? And the thing is, there's not much forgiveness over on the state side. See, in defense side, we lose all the time, and it's like,
right.
You win. It's like, oh, attaboy. And then if you screw up and you did a couple lines of cocaine, you got arrested by beating your girlfriend, the public defender's like, well, we got all the excuses in the world. Just get back in there, go work in the library for a while and come back. But in the prosecutor's office, like, you lost the case, you're fired, buddy. That's because they're unforgiving a-holes. Whereas
they need that 95% conviction rate.
Yes.
I want to compliment the prosecutors on one thing, though, if I may, which I don't know if anybody's expecting anybody to do that, but I'd like to. I have a feeling. So there's this thing. So Branka, if you watch the trial, and if you watch just a little bit of the one witness, Dominique Jones, if you watch like literally 2 minutes of her, even 30 seconds of her, you'll understand and you'll see that these people who are, on the defense side for witnesses, they're all terrible. And the fact of the matter is, I actually think that the prosecution... Yeah, on the state side. Did I say defense? Yeah, I meant state. So I think actually that the state prepared them very well, because I saw them getting kind of frustrated and flustered with some of the questions, and I saw kind of their real personalities coming out. But I think that they prepared them very well to answer the questions in a particular sort of way, so as to not incriminate themselves, so as to not look, because I really think they should have caught charges for at least assaults. If not, from where I sit as a non-lawyer, I see felony murder, having, vaguely studied this, but, I'm probably wrong about that.
That's interesting you say that, because preparing witnesses, you're allowed to prepare witnesses, right? You can't tell witnesses to lie, but you're allowed to prepare your witnesses. You ought to. You have an obligation, I would say, an ethical obligation to prepare your witnesses. And so... But it's so rarely done effectively, because most of the witnesses are just about as stupid as most of the defendants. So
the witnesses they're very stupid. They're all very stupid, but they know how to present themselves, at least in that moment, and that makes me think they've been prepared very well. But the problem is that you can see very clearly when they start getting defensive that they have things to hide, that they don't want to incriminate themselves. They come across, cagey, dodgy. They come across like they're not telling the full story. It's very obvious, that this was an incitement to violence, and I think that they were prepared well. Basically, that's something I will compliment the prosecution on.
Also, though, that the problem there's a moral blindness on the part of the prosecutors here, because they're putting the black hat on the defendants, and they're used to saying all our guys are wonderful and good, and these are bad guys. Okay, and they can't get out of that because usually that's true. Okay, but in this case, it's absolutely not true. That all the sympathy is with the defense, but they're still trying to put the black hat on the defendant and the defendant's family, and it's falling very flat. Well, I want to keep moving on because we have some more grades to deliver.
Sure.
And I want to give my strong F to the police.
Yeah.
The police work here is terrible.
Terrible.
And it's basically it's lazy, and I think worse than the prosecutor's office, because the prosecutor's office and the police are the same thing. People need to understand this. That is the same entity. That is all the state. It's all. But the problems with this case, the reason it gets inertia and it gets filed and it gets done, is because the police are doing a sloppy job a lazy job, and mailing it in and just being done with it and just like sitting on their rear ends. And it was a very poor investigation, top to bottom. And I think that the arrogance and the sloppiness from the police has transmitted its way all the way to this trial. And
You
so
know what happens when you defund the police and you drive all the actual professionals out of the profession?
What happens?
you
Tell us.
you end up with these guys.
Oh,
yeah, I don't know. This
well.
is Palm
You
Beach.
end up with the hacks.
This is Palm Beach County. That's one of the wealthiest counties in the country. So I don't know if that's I don't know if I would go with that because
No, they may be well paid, but what happens if one of those cops ends up shooting a 15-year-old black kid?
Oh, right. I get you. Well, they did not do a very good job. And I think that's really the core.
That's an understatement.
Yeah.
Oh God. When Jeff and I were watching the other night, we were like yelling at the, it's just the lady cop because she was so aggravating. She just like, when we couldn't tell if she was, like intentionally, obfuscating in order to not seem stupid, or if she was just incredibly freaking stupid. Like, it was just impossible to know how stupid she really was.
Hold on one second. I want to show Andrew this real quick. Can you hear this?
I assume that's comb over guy.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, his hair was fantastic.
I can't hear it, Steve. So the audio is not playing.
I can't either.
Okay, well you can't hear. That's comb over. Okay, so police were giving them an F. Defense attorney Mark Shiner.
Oh, I
I'm
loved
giving
him.
him an A.
By the way, if you're a defendant, you should always presume the police will get an F grade from your perspective. And also, they work for the other side. So
That's fair.
So what do you think about am I muted? Oh, I'm sorry. That was the audio. The audio was muted. Yeah, you got to do. I don't know all the technical things. You got to push a button or something. So it didn't work. I gave it a shot.
oh, there's electrons and internet and stuff.
Yeah, some kind of electron.
I mean, I did the same thing that you did, Branka, and I exited myself from my own stream. So, I was like, goodbye, everybody, and I just left. I left Solomon and David sitting there just like not knowing what to do. So,
I've definitely done that.
Yeah,
Ben
done
Pat
that.
is in the chat, and he says, give him an A. And he says, Dominique should be charged at least with domestic violence. Yes, but see, this is typical. When they've got the big murder charge, they're not going to cloud that murder charge up with a lot of smaller felonies and misdemeanors because that complicates their murder charge. So all that stuff goes away.
And folks, the murder charges are for prosecutors. These are career-making cases. All right, this is the big leagues. This is the MLB for them. All right, that's why I tell people if you have to defend yourself, if heaven forbid you have to shoot someone, you don't want that person to die, because if that person dies, I mean, consistent with neutralizing the threat against you and your family, but if that person actually dies, it becomes a murder case. You get all the prosecutor's attention. You get the most senior people in the office. They get all the resources to come after you. If that person is just neutralized, they can't harm you anymore, and they don't die, completely different case.
And then what happens is these are the guys that become judges.
Right.
Because they say, I prosecuted the whole problem. I got a guilty verdict and I have all these things and I got death on these 5 guys. And then it goes up to the governor's office and they're a prosecutor and they're tough on crime. And we're not going to put these soft, bleeding heart defense attorneys on the bench. So these are the guys that you're seeing, that the woman and this guy, the closing, those are your future judges. So how do you like those?
Just think if you ever went to a dinner party and you met one guy and he played AAA baseball, which is pretty impressive. AAA baseball, that's a very high level. And then 10 minutes later, you met a guy who actually played for the major leagues. Those are two different things, right? Well, prosecutors are the same way. If they've been prosecuting felonies, but aggravated assaults, all kinds of stuff, but now they can do a murder, the murder moves them up to the major leagues. They're hungry for that. They want that. That puts them on another level professionally.
And this is the thing. They view these cases as their ego support.
Right. Absolutely.
They don't see it as human beings on the other end of this file.
No, the humans are all pawns.
They're all pawns. This is sick, but true. And you can see it. That's why they're all personally invested, and they don't care about the truth. They just want to win. They don't care about if it means putting somebody in prison for the rest of their life, and they get a tick, and they're
the jury said it was okay.
The jury said it was okay, so I'm okay with that, right? End justifies the mean, and now I've got something I can put on my resume. Look at all the murder convictions I got.
Paging Michael Gravely. Hello.
So police bad. Defense attorney Mark Shire is excellent.
I'll give him an A- on his closing just because he got a little pedantic and a little bit rambly and run on. He didn't condense it as much as he could have. That's a lot for me to say because I've never given a closing statement. So what am I? I'm sure that, but I think that overall, just like as an armchair, observer, I really did like his closing, and I thought that he hammered a lot of the points that were necessary.
I think he was excellent. He could have been.
He was very good on cross.
A little more.
Yeah,
organized.
yeah.
Because he was rambling a little bit. It was a long closing. It was every point he was making was excellent.
Yeah.
And I love the aggression and the passion and the belief that he had in his case, the way he opened, and he called like this detective is stupid. And
I think he called her an idiot, which I was very satisfied to hear. I mean, yeah.
Isn't it weird how often that happens though? Because I saw the same thing during the Murdaugh trial, right? The South Carolina murder trial.
Mm-hmm.
And I presume this NFL player has private counsel, right? He's got plenty of money, so he's well-paid counsel.
Yes.
And the Murdaugh trial, same thing, very well-placed counsel. I mean, one of his counsel was also a state representative. I mean, these guys were making plenty of money, but their closing was very imperfect.
Yeah, I didn't like it.
It was okay. I mean, it was competent. It wasn't ineffective assistance of counsel, but it was not world class, which is what you think you're paying for. Is to have a
because you
perfect
pay
closing.
a lot of money doesn't mean you're going to get the best.
No, but you should. That's what you should. Well, of course, we know you won't.
How does a
you can't know? That's a problem. I mean, the consumers of legal services are completely ill-equipped to judge whether they're going to get value for money. But even in the moment, they can't judge what they're getting. But I can judge. I can see it. I can look at that closing and say that was 20% short of perfect.
And the problem is that I think closing arguments are essential.
Everything.
I mean, it's sort of like the season finale of a show, like American Horror Story. I can criticize the writers, like they do a great series, and then the ending is a total mess, and you're just sitting there going, "Well, what the hell was that?" Like why did I sit through that whole thing? Yeah, the closing is the most important aspect, in my opinion.
And being disorganized to me is the worst sin because a lawyer has no control over the law, and he has no control over the facts. He's stuck with the facts you give him, but his job is to tell the story, to work with the law and facts, to tell a story on behalf of his clients. And if he's disorganized in that, I can't tell you how mad that makes me. That's his fundamental job.
It wasn't as bad. I'm going to push back a little bit. I don't think it was quite as disorganized. It could have been organized better. It could have been structured better. The problem is there were so many ways to go, and he got a little confused. It got a little much. And he was
sorry.
Kind of going in circles.
I do not accept that as an excuse. Okay, you have to pick a story.
And I think the theme was not the best theme. The theme, and was reminded to me, is that there's no hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, right? And so it was blaming the girlfriend who was threatening him and called the hit out and all this stuff. So
which was a callback to the opening. He also said that in the opening, and I liked that as a theme.
That's the theme. That's the defense theme. But the problem with that theme that I have is that it doesn't get to the essence of the case, which is self-defense. And, the fact that they had guns and that they were pointing guns at him and he's defending his brother.
You're right.
From these gunfighters.
It's not strong because she doesn't have charges.
Nowhere to be seen.
She doesn't have charges. There's not going to be any consequence for her if the jury ends up agreeing with that.
She's not his legal defense, right?
Yeah,
his legal defense is self-defense.
Exactly. And another problem I had was that I felt like the state, as you pointed out, had kind of a strong argument with that. They turned and they left. And I feel like defense should have predicted that, and they should have been able to respond to that more easily.
They should have focused on that issue, I think.
Right.
And there's different styles. And I will say that this is the way I prosecute and defend a case, both. I do it the same way on either side, is I focus on what is the issue in this case. And
you have to tell the jury what the story is. Don't let them figure out what the story is. This is the story. This is the theme. And I'm going to explain to you why the only way to look at the law and evidence in this case is to acquit my client. You have to provide them with that path.
Right. And the thing is also, like, the woman involved, she never, she wasn't a party to the violence. She wasn't there that night. She isn't really a part of the action. And so what does the jury do with that? It's just not, it's not consistent. And it kind of, what it does is, like, it throws the blame in this other direction. And so even if they do agree with that, then they're left with, well, but what about the fact that, they were leaving? I mean, the big question is, the big question is, were they pointing guns at him or were they not? That's the big question.
Is not answered by the theme. The theme is woman scorn, and it doesn't answer the question, because just what you said is like, well, who do we believe? And and we should have focused on, like, when he started, it was really good. Like, the terrible police work, and it's a mystery, and the defense, or the state, has to disprove beyond and the exclusion of every reasonable doubt that he was not acting in self-defense.
Right.
And here's what happened. We know there's a gun in his pocket, and we know these thugs were there to attack, and they were...
Do you not have a reasonable doubt?
Right.
Do you not have a reasonable doubt? Right.
Yes. So you've got to say that there was all kinds of reasonable doubt as to, they were acting in self-defense, but it's not us to prove. It's up to them to show that it didn't happen. And there's so much evidence. Look at who's the attacker here, who's the aggressive. And his brother, who just got beat up, and now he's out there and he sees a gun. He's reacting, trying to defend his brother and himself from these crazed attackers who have guns and are thugs.
Yep.
It's funny.
I want to write a different closing.
Yesterday, I was in this Daubert hearing. They call it a Shrek hearing in Colorado here. But I was being questioned as an expert witness whether I could testify at trial, and I was undergoing cross-examination by the prosecution, who's being the usual snide, snark kind of stuff they do, and I mentioned, the legal question is this, and she's like, "Are you saying if someone merely glares at someone, that could justify killing them?" I'm like, "No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying the legal question is this. Well, what if?" No, the legal question is still this. The legal question doesn't change. The fact finding could change. That's the province of the jury. I'm not here to testify about the facts. The legal question is this. And by the way, the burden is on you to disprove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And she physically flinched in the courtroom.
They hate that. The prosecutors hate it when you say that. But it's true, and that's why I hammer it and hammer it and hammer it. And I'd put that right in my theme. That would be my theme. I'd find some artful way to put that, like, the state has the responsibility, and they're the Keystone cops that have concealed from you the real evidence that you're going to hear from our honest witnesses here.
I have a different one, but
and because of that concealment, that's a reasonable doubt right there. And we know what happened. We know that they had a gun because he had a gun. They recovered a gun, and his hand in the gun position when he died. I love that, right? And they don't even care. It's I would almost say jumping to conclusions or leaping to a conclusion, like rush to judgment, something like that.
Jeff made many Office Space jokes. I don't know if you missed those.
No, I missed those.
We have these different conclusions that you can jump to.
Right. The theme should have been more tied closely to the actual defense, because I don't like that Dominique girl, but what about this shouting thing? I don't have the mnemonic device that connects into the actual defense.
Well, so for me personally, if I was going to write a closing as a layperson here, I would start with basically, like, imagine if you woke up in the middle of the night and you heard people pounding on your door, and you open that door and there are people who I already violated a rule. Because
how would you feel if?
Okay. Well, that's why you guys are lawyers and I'm not. But that's the thing. It's I'm sitting there, and that's the thing that's going through my head. I'm empathizing because I feel like, okay, I'm just gonna say, let's just nix the closing. But with the defense witnesses, I was sitting there and I was just thinking, these people must have been terrified. They were very sympathetic. They were telling their story. I believe them.
That you're allowed to do. So you weren't wrong on substance. It was just form. So you can say, what's the evidence we heard here? The evidence is this guy heard pounding on his door. Mm-hmm. He heard shouting outside. He opened the door. People attacked him outside. You can talk about all of that.
Oh, I could
say, how would you feel if?
Any reasonable person.
That's what they're going to do.
Any reasonable person in his shoes would have done what he did.
No, you're still getting...
No, wrong. Okay. This is why I need to go to law school. I'm trying.
Right.
But But that's the thing. It's like, okay, just as somebody
Yeah,
watching,
I'm grading down my defense attorney. I liked him so much, and now I'm going to have to give him an A-.
yeah, you
Because
think?
you've talked me into it. I didn't like the theme, and I think his lack of organization could have been better. I did like the. I mean, let's
Well,
just
because
say
his focus
I
was
liked
all.
him. Go ahead.
Sorry, his focus was all on the things that went wrong with the investigation, and I didn't disagree with him. He made a lot of really good points, but the
That's
most
a guilty person's defense. That's not a good defense.
I know
I'm sorry.
that's what I'm trying to say. I feel like he needed to when you're Branko, when you're talking about, like what is the legal question? I mean, what is the crux of this issue here? What is the thing that the jurors are going to get stuck on? I feel like that's what you need to focus on. And I feel like
The jury
he really
can't think of 40 different legal doctrines. That's not
Exactly.
how it works.
It was-
you need
he-
one
Especially with these
question
jury
for them to
instructions.
answer.
he went all around it. It was about the shoddy investigation. It was about how the witnesses were liars, how they had credibility
And
issues.
you can mention all that, but it has to be ancillary. It has to be kind of what's causing this confusion. Why is this not working? Well, this is part of it, but the real question is this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm saying that some people are saying that he hit on all that SLV, LV, and I want to welcome to my channel Law Nerd Amber. So see, you get personalized welcomes on my channel. Just want to let you know. You see there, so you're in the right place. But SLV, LV says that we're wrong, that he was hitting those points, and that we're off. I'm not.
That's probably him.
Yeah, I'm just I'm just rolling with the punches here. So. We all have our, but I'm going to do an A- on Mr. Mark Shiner. So Judge B+, ASA is a D, police are an F, Mark Shiner's an A-, and here's the bonus grade. You ready for the bonus grade?
Yeah.
The Rudolph family. I'm going to give them an A.
Oh, yes.
I think they came across, regardless of the outcome of the case, and if this guy screwed up his life for the rest of his life, by killing this guy and going to prison for the rest of his life, I am going to be very upset, very sad, because to me, these are all very good people. I liked the whole family, and I must say they came across great, and it will be a tragedy that this guy, if he gets convicted, because he may be technically guilty, and it may be the right legal outcome, but it's a tragedy for our society that somebody with this kind of accomplishment and this kind of character gets caught up in this machine that grinds people up. And I want people, next time they say, well, there should be no...
Steve, in fairness, it's the same machine the plumber gets caught up in.
Right.
The guy who works at the convenience store gets caught up in.
And it's like, well, they aren't big NFL guys. They're just average Joes, right? But, the system grinds people up. Anyway, I just want to give a little shout out to this family, because I'm very impressed with Mom. She did a great job raising two great kids.
3.
And
well, we didn't get to see the sister, but yeah, the 2 sons who testified were, excellent.
I didn't see the sister. How did they come across?
The sister did not testify, but there's another daughter who, because they keep mentioning her name, because her name is Tierney, but the defense attorney kept pronouncing it as tyranny, which I thought was very funny. But she didn't appear. She was not a witness. I don't think, because she wasn't at the house that night.
Okay.
Maybe she's terrible.
Well,
I don't know. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you, but yeah, sorry.
No, well, she's not a witness, so she wouldn't be coming in, testifying.
So she raised at least 2 great kids, maybe 3.
Yeah, let me see. Here's okay. Hold on a second. We're sort of at the end here, but I want to hear what Michigan law says, because hold on a second. He watched a lot of this trial too.
Are we talking about MLS law?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wanted to give him a shout out because he actually started streaming the trial before, I think a little earlier, and he's been doing a great job.
Yeah, so I'd like to have his impressions and his grading, if you wouldn't mind. I just sent you a link. Hopefully you can come in.
So for SLV, LV, Branko watched the case. It's unique, weird twists, turns, and no case to compare it to. I believe you. First of all, Branko spelled with a C and not a K. But folks, I understand a lot of you have been telling me I need to watch this case. Just like all of you, I only have 24 hours in the day. So I can't watch all the cases. And I try to focus on the ones that look like they have a legitimate self-defense perspective. This one didn't look like that to me from the start. Maybe
really
it does in the end. I don't know.
But who can have all the time in the world to watch every case is MLS Law.
Hey,
MLS,
David.
how are you, man?
Good. Yeah. So I watched a lot of it, and when I wasn't streaming on my YouTube, we were watching in my Discord. And from day one, the girlfriend, all the nonsense with the girlfriend and all that was great drama and entertainment and silliness to watch, but none of it mattered. What mattered was when he left his door,
Right.
he went
Yep.
running down that way. What was going on then? And where was his brother? What was happening to his brother? And all of that. And none of that was really caught clearly on camera. So you had to rely on the testimony of the witnesses. That was the big thing that I saw. And at the end of the day, the state's witnesses, the ones that were actually there, were really disingenuous. I don't believe a word that they said at all. And it was self-serving testimony to begin with. And I believed the defense witnesses. I believed mom, I believed brother, and I believed defendant. Now, I don't think the defendant came off as credible as he could have been. Again, you have to convey to the jury that you were in fear for your life. And he was a little separate, in my opinion.
He was pretty cool.
He was pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
Trying to explain that.
And when he was running out with a video of him running out that door with that AR pistol, and he trips over and he's fleeing, he's in emergency mode. Yeah. And so his description of it was a little disjointed and disconnected from the way he seemed at that video when he's running out the door with a gun.
Yeah, and I try to put myself in that position because I feel like I could be I could appear very cold when I'm trying to describe an emotional situation that I might have gone through. So that's okay. But I think it was good that they put mom and then the defendant, one right after each other. And I think that those two together really worked well.
And I think his brother, didn't you think his brother was excellent?
Yes, absolutely. But he was the day before. So I'm like getting in the mindset of that day, the last day of testimony. It was mom and then the defendant. And I think those two went well together. And again, at the end of the day, it really comes down to who's the jury going to believe.
But that comes back to the point I always make, which is that much of this is theater. The jury, they're not in courtrooms every day. They're not professional jurors. They're an audience that's been put into a theater. It's literally theater seating in most courtrooms.
Yeah.
They're put in a theater, and they're hearing stories being told to them. And they're not in the position of the judge or the prosecution or the defense. It's not like this is their normal day-to-day job. And you have to sell it to them as a story. This is Frozen. This is Disney. This is drama. This is a narrative that you're selling.
There's a problem with that, though. And I agree with you somewhat. But there's also a point that, I teach all my trial attorneys in our office that to be true to yourself. And I think that the prosecutors, they've got this thing about they've got a way to be a prosecutor, and they're going to condemn, and they're going to, talk this way, and they're going to
the big finger, right?
Shout out at the end,
accused,
and it's all this drama, and it's fake. It's disingenuous. It's like, here's my mask, and I'm going to put this mask on here, and it's like you're just lying to me. And I think the defense attorney was always the same, and he was consistent with everybody. He was who he was. He was true to himself, and that comes across as much more genuine, and it's much more believable.
But when I say theater, Steve, I don't mean overacting drama. I mean, you're telling a story to the jury, right? We've all been to high school plays, right? Elementary school plays where they're overacting, and we've been to Broadway plays where they do it effectively, right?
Right.
It's still telling a story to the jury. I would like to think that everyone would do it in an adult, responsible, coherent, rational way. But make no mistake, you are telling a story to that jury.
Sincerity. Right. Steve, sincerity is how you do it. And when I saw the female prosecutor get up there, I didn't see sincerity. What I saw is someone who got the lead in the local community production.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly. And I would, by the way, I would point that out in closing if I were the defense. I would point that out. I would say, we're all here telling you what we think is our vision of what happened. You have to decide who to believe. Think about who you're willing to believe. Is it the dramatic screaming person?
Yeah, exactly. Is it the dramatic screaming person who's reiterating testimony that is clearly not believable? They just went over there to talk. That was what the testimony was.
Yeah,
that was what the narrative was. That's
With
why-
four dudes with guns.
Why did the
that's
prosecutor?
BS.
Why was the prosecutor even making that attempt to try to rehabilitate those dirtbags? Their case is not dependent on that, but they felt like they really, like they even said that the Sebastian guy, the driver of the car, was a hero. He's he's a hero.
He's a hero. He laid himself on the other guy and saved his life and gave his. Yeah, that's what she portrayed, and it's nonsense. Nobody's going to believe that.
Beat him up and maybe kill him. It's garbage. This guy's not a hero, but why the prosecutor feels the need to put a saintly white hat on these people, these dirtbags? It's not critical to their case, but they felt the need to do it, and it sounded disingenuous. And then it's like, now I don't believe anything you're saying. I mean, I really am. This is not the way I would have prosecuted this case.
If I was the prosecutor, I would come right out and say, these four guys did wrong.
Right.
Exactly. The girlfriend did wrong. She
right.
sent them over there. They went over there with bad intentions. They're bad guys. They beat them up, but that still doesn't mean that
they were
that
leaving,
he had the right to shoot them
there, and this
as they were leaving. Right.
As they were leaving. That's what I would hammer on. I wouldn't try to sell the story that they went over there just to talk and the one guy was a hero. No. Lean into the reality that is they were thugs, but they were leaving. And that's where self-defense ended.
Well, like Christina Arizona says, demon time. That was what they said. When they came there, they said it's demon time. They went there to attack and physically assault this guy and his brother. And they called it demon time, which I guess means that, like, we're not here to talk. We're here to do some evil. And
I wasn't clear on the definition, but I think that sounds right.
Yeah.
I'm not in love with the slang from Gen Z. It is very uncool.
Well, MLS, you're a yeoman. You were following this case a lot, and you put a lot of time. Now, what do you think about the grades? So, judge, can you give me a quick rundown of what your grades would be? Did you have?
Me? I don't know how this grading thing works. I did see a bit of your grading thing. So it's a letter grade, A through E. Is that what we're doing?
A through F, it's
A through F, okay.
Standard grading system, like you're in
standard
school.
Grading system. So the judge, I would give the judge a B. I thought he had good control of the courtroom, although it wasn't perfect. I think he allowed some of the witnesses to get away with a lot of nonsense, especially the girlfriend talking back. I think that should have been quelled. So I'll give him a B minus, I guess. We'll go with B minus for the judge, just the way he was handling some of the witnesses. Are we grading the prosecutor as a team?
Yes.
Or
overall?
Okay.
Grade.
Overall grade of the prosecutors, I would give. Oh God, a D. Maybe being generous, a D. I would. What do you got?
You got the D. ASA D.
D. Okay. I would say a D. Yeah. The defense. I would give
police first.
I'm sorry.
Police.
Oh, police. Oh God. Police, I would give them truly an F, based off of the lead detective, Shark Lady, Hammerhead Shark Lady. My chat was saying that her eyes are so far apart, she looks like a hammerhead shark.
Oh, that was what was happening in Jeff's chat too. Everybody called her hammerhead.
I think we
also.
share some of the chat. Yeah,
that's really funny. Emily Vander something.
Yeah, based on her alone, I would give them an F, flat out F for their investigative process.
If I don't know that evidence doesn't exist, I can't go looking for it.
Wait a minute, you need a warrant to take a picture?
Oh, that was so bad. Yeah, so
that was what. No, I didn't take pictures of the defendant because I need a warrant. That's what she said on the stand. How do you combat that? That was one of the things I was talking about. How as a defense attorney do you combat this when you have a police officer on the stand just making up the law?
No, you can bring in an expert witness.
Well,
Absolutely.
that was what I was going to say. That's the only way to combat it is to get another officer in there and say.
And presumably this guy's got the money to do that. So, I mean, we see this happen in cases all the time where the police did a complete bullshit investigation and the defense hires, police expert witnesses to say, no, this is the proper way to do this kind of investigation.
Most of my clients don't have the money to hire.
No, of course not. Nobody does.
But I'm just thinking in my mind, if I had this situation in one of my cases, and I do all the time, police officers make up BS on the stand all the time.
Right.
And you try to think about how you're going to question them going forward to get them tripped up in their own illogic.
Sure.
But yeah, so F absolutely for the police. And then
And
are
then
we
we've
doing
got the
defense?
defense attorney.
Defense attorney, I would give I'm going to give a B plus.
Okay. What was
I
your
think there were
criticism?
some times when he allowed the witnesses to kind of get under his skin, especially Cliff Clavin. I don't know his real name. He looks like Cliff Clavin from Cheers.
Well,
But
Mark Shiner is the
Mark Shiner, yeah, Mark Shiner's the lead. Yeah, so I would give him a B plus because at times I feel like he allowed the witnesses to control him a little bit. And then who else are we
What
going
about the what about the Rudolph family? How do you think they came across as a family?
um I
That's always my wild card. I have a wild card at the end, you know.
yeah, okay, the family. I so we're taking mom, brother, and defendant, right? Those are the
Right.
three.
The three.
I would give them an A minus. I thought mom got a little heated. I thought the defendant was a little not emotional enough. I guess I don't know how else to say that, but overall A minus. I would say for the family, the way they
Yeah,
testified.
well, see, look at that. You're almost right on the money. Did you see my grades? See, I put the
They're
judge at B
Almost
plus,
exactly the same.
Okay,
ASA
nice.
to D, police F, defense attorney I gave A minus, and Rudolph family an A.
All right, yeah, we're not that far off. Not that
So
far
pretty
off.
well. And you watched a lot more than I did, in all honesty. So I'm glad you came on, and thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you
So-
for having me on.
So what well, does anybody in the chat have any other questions? Let's see. He doesn't have money. He played 2 years undrafted, possibly 220 a year before agent takes his cut. Yeah, I mean,
Well, and
people
that's the
are
thing.
overestimating how much money he has.
He was a paycheck player. A lot of people
Right.
don't realize that most of the NFL are paycheck players. You've got the handful that are superstars. I have Detroit Lions that are clients of mine. They're paycheck players. They don't make the money that you guys are thinking.
Right. No, not at all. I mean, this guy, and he got injured first day of training camp with the Dolphins, and he was with the Giants. He's a wide receiver. So yeah, his money. I mean, he was okay, but and this is what makes my heart break, because let's assume he gets a not guilty. What is his future? I don't know, and I want to. He was a good kid at FSU, and I think I showed during Vices, he sat with a little autistic kid. There was some real feel-good stories about what he did at Florida State University as a wide receiver. And it's been a hard-working guy, obviously supporting his family, obviously close. So what happens when let's assume he gets a not guilty? What is his life like after this wreck?
Is he really going to the Canadian Football League? I don't
know. Is his football career over? Maybe he goes to law school.
How long is a football
look at
career?
Vic. I mean, look at Vic. He went right back in after he got out. So I don't think it's that. I don't think it's that deadly.
How long is a football career? I mean, the real average football career, is it 3 years? Is it more? Is it less? I don't know.
Like 5, 5-6 years from the players that I've dealt with.
So for a player who's being paid on like an annual basis, not one of the superstars, what's he making every year for 5 years? Is it a couple $100,000? Is it $1 million a year? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Somebody looked it up, but I can't remember exactly how much it was.
What the minimum salary of the NFL is?
I don't know what the minimum is, but I mean, the guys I deal with are making like $500,000 a year.
Canadian I think it was like $790, but
All right,
that's
so
Canadian.
$500,000 a year is a lot of money, but it's also easy to spend $500,000 a year if you want to. You buy a $3 million house, you buy a bunch of fancy cars. All of a sudden, all that money's gone.
Someone's saying 770,000. I don't know what that's from. If that's Canada, it was that. But anyway, the guys they're like mid, 500,000 a year.
But I can tell you that I don't know what football players make, but I know what the clients whose cases I work on pay for legal defense, and it's not unusual for them to pay a couple $100,000 in legal defense before they get to trial. It's a lot of goddamn money.
And NFL minimum is $660, and then we have CFL.
But between houses and cars and baby mamas, that may all go away, right?
And Darby says Canadians 85,000. So he was going to go to the Canadian League. So let's say he made a year at 660. He bought himself a really nice car. Maybe he paid off his mom's house or something, right?
Right.
He wasn't an extravagant maker.
Didn't they also have a farm too? Am I not mistaken?
Right.
Farms
They
are
had a-
expensive
Yeah,
if you're
they had
not
a
an actual
farm. I don't know
farmer.
the ownership of it, but there was a farm somewhere involved.
Well, it's an interesting thing to follow, and let's pray for the family and pray for justice. I don't know. I mean, my heart is very much with the defense. I can see this going the state way, and I don't want people to get their expectations up because there is a very clear path to guilt, and I don't see any. And I didn't see any obvious appellate errors. Did you, David?
I'm not typical a criminal appellate attorney, but I am looking for issues. And I think the only thing that I might have spotted um, were some of the jury instructions. And I don't know how strong that is because
Well, we
I
talked. Chandler and I talked a lot about that on the beginning of the
Were they
front end of
objected
the
to?
program.
yes, absolutely. No, there was a lot of
Okay.
heated argument. There was like 2 hours yesterday. There was a couple of hours today still of arguments over the jury instructions. They sounded really confusing. I couldn't quite follow the argument, but I'm not looking at the pleadings.
Well, see,
So
here's the problem with the close. Here's the problem with the manslaughter instruction, because I think the arguments were mostly around the attempted manslaughter crime, which we and Chandler and I, when we were on, just me and her, we talked about the problems with attempted manslaughter as a crime. It really
yeah,
it exists in Florida, but it is illogical and irrational as a
Right.
matter of
It's the
That doesn't
concept
make
of
sense.
intent.
it's a big, yeah,
You have
accidentally
to have
or
you have to have intent to attempt something. If it's manslaughter, it was not
Was it an
intentional.
intentionally unintentional, reckless, heat
Well,
of passion crime?
Well, that was
Is
why
it-
my question in particular was: is it called attempted manslaughter when it's somebody hits somebody with a car and that person doesn't die? That was the only thing that made
Well, it's
sense
like-
to me. Like how what do they
you
charge that for
intentionally
that?
had an accident. That's what it is saying.
did
It doesn't make any sense.
I don't know how it's written, and it was really weird the way they were arguing. But
I just want to know what they apply that charge to, what kind of situations they apply that charge to, so I can comprehend it better.
It's a appendix of the interactions of the attempted murder statute and the lesser included. So it's a legal artifact that exists because of that. Now there's a case called Montgomery, and we had a bunch of
A legal artifact. We need Steve right now in an Indiana Jones outfit with a whip and the whole bit.
I would like to see that.
Collecting an artifact.
Yeah, well, I could put on my farmhand Tom hat. Does that work? Does that count?
No.
The thing is it's a legal artifact because you have this attempt idea, which requires specific intent. Okay, but specific intent means I intentionally did it. But the manslaughter is culpable negligence. So I intentionally was culpably negligent, which is illogical. So it really shouldn't exist. But because of the combination of the attempt with the murder lessers, you get this weird crime. And it has been challenged. And there's a case called Taylor from 1983 where the Supreme Court was asked, does the crime of attempted manslaughter exist in Florida? And the answer is it's illogical, but yes, because of precedent. And then there was a follow-on case called Montgomery. And believe me, I know this to my heart because we had probably 250 cases come through our office that were cases called Montgomery relief. And that was when people were given improper instructions on the manslaughter, the attempted manslaughter instruction, and it was wrong. And so everybody was entitled to new trials based on this Montgomery instruction. So now we're always looking for, is it properly stated? And then there's a follow-on to that. And here's the next leaf of the page. The problem with this instruction as being an appellate issue is that there's further case law that says it has to be one charge separated. So in order to challenge the improper instruction of attempted manslaughter, he needs to get convicted of second-degree murder or attempted second-degree murder. If he's convicted of first-degree murder, that's 2 steps away, and he can't challenge the instruction.
Oh, interesting. I was wondering, is the attempted manslaughter, is it connected in any way with the intent to do an act that
Yes,
just
that
happened
is
to be negligent?
That's the saving grace, is you must intend to do a criminal act. That's the way they phrase it in the case law to bail it out. It's still illogical and BS, and it shouldn't.
It is. I was just trying to make some sort of logic out of it. Like if you intend to do the act, like you can get it that way. If you intend to consume alcohol and then you drive,
Right.
Well,
but could you have attempted DUI manslaughter?
No, not in Michigan.
Yeah. So it shouldn't be in Florida. Florida has screwed up the murder instructions. They really need to have some defense attorneys get on the committee to help them out with these things, but they don't. They systematically exclude us. And so they end up with comprehensive, because they make it easier. We were talking to Chandler and I were talking about the first degree murder problem, about all it takes is just an instant, just a trigger pull, and that's first degree murder. But that wipes out the second degree murder. So everything that's second degree murder is first degree murder. So it's so convoluted. And we have, this is welcome to appellate world, which is jury instructions. So I don't.
That's the only thing I spotted that I thought might have been an appellate issue, but otherwise, I thought it.
Look at Rose. Look at Rose in the chat. She's got the citation up. Good for you.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, I love it.
You know what we should definitely do is we should definitely lower the standards for people to get into law school, and the standards for graduating from law school, and then the standards from passing the bar, so that these lower tier people can then become lawyers and then become prosecutors and defense attorneys and then become judges, because the system will be way better with lesser qualified people running it.
That's the argument against the law school that I went to. Everyone said, oh, they lowered their standards. They lowered the LSAT requirements. They're going to flood the school or the profession with all these incompetent lawyers. I think I'm fairly competent.
But you're speaking in anecdotes. You may be awesome, but can we expect the norm to get better if we lower the standards?
No, not at all.
Right.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I agree first of all, there are too many attorneys out there. Absolutely, there are too many attorneys out there. But I also don't like.
No, there's too many bad attorneys. I wouldn't mind if they were good attorneys.
Well, okay, fair enough.
Attorneys.
There's too many bad. But
folks,
if you have less attorneys, period, you'll have less bad ones, right? That's the idea.
No, just because the system's broken, that might be the way it works. But folks, I have to say, David, I'm sorry. I'd love to continue this conversation.
All right,
but my wife
wrapping
is
it.
about to jump into the hot
Go
tub,
promote.
and
Yeah,
I'm
someone
going to join
go
her.
promote something,
So, had a great time here, folks. Really love being here. Chandler, great working with you. David, great seeing you again. Steve, of course, you know I love you. And we'll all talk again soon. Have a good night, folks.
All right, love you, buddy. Thank you.
Take care.
See ya.
Yeah, MG Law agrees. It's already flooded.
What's that?
The profession is already flooded with incompetent lawyers.
Yeah,
there's a difference between a trial attorney and someone who works in research and does maybe appellate law and stuff like that. There's a certain knack to performing in front of a jury, and a lot of attorneys don't have that enough practice in doing that, and it really kind of shines in some of these cases.
Well, and this is where I think you saw the prosecutors, because prosecutors are not used to doing cross-examination. They're not used to having good defenses. And so you get this kind of amateur hour, temper tantrum that we saw, rather than good controlled legal delivery. And I think that's, I'm very disappointed in the prosecutors across the country. I mean, it's such a low bar, and they're so arrogant and so full of themselves. And it really, it's a problem of unchecked power.
But how often does the average prosecutor even go to trial?
Right.
I would say it's probably less than the average criminal defense attorney.
Right.
Well, David, I had a question
Yeah.
for you, if you don't mind. I was just curious what you thought of the closing
I
for the
thought
prosecutors.
the prosecutor's closing, the woman, she was praising, I felt like she should have been in church on Sunday morning.
She was like the female Johnny Cochran. That was how I perceived her.
I thought at one
But
point
not
the
as good.
choir was, going to break out from behind the screen. I thought it was ridiculous, honestly. I thought the antics were ridiculous. I didn't think, and again, it's sincerity, right? I tell people your opening statement is like a dinner table, right? You're setting the table. Someone should be able to walk into the dining room and know if this is a formal event, are we just having a picnic here? What's going on? You're setting that. Your closing argument, every little witness is a piece of the puzzle. And your closing argument is painting that final picture. And you want to compel the jury to see the picture the way you see it. And you can only do that. Us humans only respond to sincerity in your storytelling. And the difference is if you see public speakers and they're sitting there reading a page word for word versus someone who's actually looking out at the audience and not reading and telling you a story, you respond more to the person who's staring at you out in the audience and telling a story, because that's how we are built as people. That's how we work. And it's that sincerity that compels you. But when you're not sincere, no matter what you say, is you're going to lose people's attention. You're going to bore them. They're not going to be listening to you. They're not going to care, no matter how good your case is. And I didn't see sincerity in the state's closing at all. I
Right.
did with the defense's closing.
Well, it's interesting. I will say I've been telling. I train the appellate office. My board certification is actually in criminal trial law.
Okay.
So I was actually a trial lawyer for many years until I became an appellate lawyer. And I really think our best appellate lawyers, with a few exceptions, I'll say hat tip to my buddy Nancy, who's amazing, the best appellate lawyer we have. But generally, it helps a lot to have courtroom experience because, like, when you've been through 6,000 pleas, when you're reading a plea and it doesn't go according to plan, it jumps off the page at you, right? It's like when I'm reading jury instructions, I know I've read them so many times. It's like, okay, ding, 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 and then all of a sudden, wait, where's this? What happened here? It's like you zero right in on the issues because you've heard it so much that it jumps out the page at you. I found that. I don't know how some of my colleagues come into the appellate office and not having tried a case and do the issue spotting. And so I try to encourage, especially young kids who are into practice, to go through the trial divisions because appellate is really about 1% of law. Most law is trial. Trial is general. As long as there's a constitution, a right to a jury trial, you're going to have, and that applies to civil, criminal, all sorts of things. And then, of course, there's the book practice, kind of the writing wills and estates and that kind of thing, or watching the paint dry. But in the litigation world, it's about trial. Appeals is such a thin little specialty. And so I try to encourage young attorneys to go into the trial divisions and try cases and watch that because that's where the action is, even if you end up in appeals eventually.
Well, even if you're going to be doing appeals, you still have to, publicly stand up and state in front of an appellate court what the issues are and be able to present it in an intelligent way without reading it and things like that. Not that that's actually going to necessarily help you
right
with the appeal, because appeals usually are based. I don't even know why we have oral arguments sometimes on some of our appeals.
Actually, I've got big problems with oral arguments because it's almost a game. It's like let's trip you up. It's like a hazing ritual.
Yeah.
And it should be all contained within the pleadings anyway. And so your briefing should cover the issues. And why do you want me to be up there? There are reasons, and I actually have this is part of my appellate training. When do you orally argue? One is when the state misrepresents law or facts, because if I want to call them out on it, and I want to do it in front of those judges. So there's a certain humiliation factor. So if somebody's misrepresenting the law or facts, I'm going to orally argue. And also, if there's evidence that I really, really want them to review, then I'll orally argue. I had this one case, it was a video case, and the video didn't show what they said it was. It just didn't. And that was like point one, was like the video is inconclusive. The video is inconclusive, right? And of course, I can say that all day, but how do I guarantee that they're actually going to watch the video, right? They're going to look at the cop summary of it. Or the trial transcript of it. So I orally argued it, and I remember that the judges came out from behind their little curtain, and they all come out and they're like, "We just got done watching that video, and we didn't see it either." And I'm like, "Oh, so you didn't look at that until the morning of my oral argument?" So
now that's interesting.
If I hadn't OA'd it, would you have even looked at it? So I mean, when there's something like that, then I also orally argue. But those are really.
I do agree, though, that sometimes the judges will have legitimate questions. Like I've done some appellate work, mostly in the family law adoption stuff. And the judges have sometimes very poignant questions, and I like to be able to answer them and convince them that, no, the state, when they're acting as a ward for the child, should be treated differently than a parent who's, consenting to an adoption, and why, and, and things like that. So sometimes oral arguments are good for that. Sometimes the pleadings leave out some of the detail, but I mean, if just to stand up there and give a 15-minute recitation of what you already put in your pleading makes no sense to me.
Well, and there's another reason to orally argue, and that's if you want to exhaust all your state remedies. So the case I'm arguing in oral arguing in June 15th is because if I lose, I'm going to the U.S. Supreme Court, and you don't want to do anything. You want to exhaust every possible remedy. So I don't want to waive my oral argument and say, well, I waived that, and then the feds say, well, you didn't exhaust every possible avenue of relief. So I do everything in the lower court. But yeah, so let me ask you, David, are you so do you do civil and criminal, or what?
I do civil and criminal, and I also do family. I call myself a litigator. I love the courtroom. And so my three areas, like commercial, civil litigation. I don't do personal injury or anything, but commercial, civil litigation, criminal defense, family law, and like probate litigation. People are arguing over trust and wealth. Yeah, I'm in Michigan, Southeast Michigan, Detroit area. But I practice all over. I've had cases all over the state, and so that's what I do. I just like the courtroom, so I just call myself a litigator.
Yeah, I used to like the courtroom. At this point in my life, I'm kind of like, if I didn't have another trial, I wouldn't be upset. I mean, it's like
I just had a trial, and I'm so excited for the next one. I love trial work. I don't want to be sitting in the office typing up briefs. I want to be in the courtroom arguing what I typed up 3 months ago.
I guess. How many trials have you had?
Oh God, trial. Oh, I don't know. Not a terrible amount. Maybe 25, 30, something like that. Maybe.
Get back to me when you're over 80.
Yeah, well, yeah. So maybe I'll feel differently.
Of course, we have a guy in my office. I always think like, I've had some pretty good number of trials. There's a guy in my office that's had over 250 trials.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he's
sorry to interrupt. I actually have to go, but thank you so much for having me on.
Anyway,
yeah.
So Chandler, you give us your promotion. Tell everybody where you can find you. Not that we don't know who you are, but
sure. I'm Chandler Remington. I'm a paralegal from Los Angeles, California. You can find me at Remy REMY_legal. That's my handle on YouTube. You can also find me on Twitter. Subscribe, follow, etc. And I'm going to be on tomorrow with MLS Law. We're going to be covering the Sarah Boone interview at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right?
Yes, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and whatever time you are.
I'm 1 p.m. So
1 p.m. Okay.
That'll be great. I'm looking forward to seeing you, David. And I'll see everybody there.
All right.
Thank you so much, Steve.
To wrap up, it's already 10 o'clock, so that was a lot longer than I expected. But I think we gave out some good grades tonight. And let's pray for a good, just result. And God bless everybody. And thank you for coming. MLS, do you want to plug anything before we head out?
Well, sure. After I'm with Chandler on my channel, I have Danny on Direct is coming on. We're going to talk some family law stuff. I do a lot of family law as well. So we're going to talk that. And then on Tuesdays and Saturdays, every Tuesday and Saturday at noon, Nicholas and I are doing Jodi Arias rewatch of that trial. And then I'm not sure what else is going on, but that's what I have scheduled. So check it out. It's MLS. Right,
and I want to shout out to my son, Ben. Love you, son. I don't know. And Finn, Pat, always good to see you upon the horizon. Good to see you here. And thank you, everybody. And I think it was a pretty good show. And doggone it, people like me. All right. Good night, all.
Take care.